Hello, welcome all in this session called as Saturdays for Sustainability Learning, and in which we are sustainability professionals, and we are coming together with a goal to discuss sustainability issues in a systematic manner for holistic understanding. So, holistic understanding of these issues would be a core component of this session. Okay? So, in next 2 minutes, I'll just discuss this initiative, and then we will start today's topic. So this group is a mastermind group, and if you want to know more about it, I'm just sharing on screen what is a mastermind group. Okay, so this was invented by Napoleon Hill, and I really like this concept of synergy, where when two minds come together, the outcome would be much more than the just summation of these two. So this is on the basis of this concept, this mastermind group would be working. So we will be learning from each other. This is a co-learning, co-creation platform. Okay. So what are the four outcomes that you can expect from this initiative? First is learning one new concept every week, because in our busy schedule, it's not possible to devote, let's say, 2 hours, 3 hours every day for learning. That's not possible. And also the second reason is sustainability is such a dynamic field that every now and then some new thing is coming. So in order to get information and as well as the practical implication of these new things, so devoting 1 hour in a week, so that's possible thing we can do. Second is a networking with fellow professionals, so it's trying to understand this concept with different perspectives, people from different educational background, different socio-economical background, from different geographies. That would be interesting to learn, right? Third is career opportunities in terms of jobs or in terms of entrepreneurial opportunities, that is also we are looking for. And the fourth is the thought leadership. This is the group which will lead the sustainability in next maybe a decade or so. So that is what we will try to achieve. That's a collective effort we would like to bring forward. Okay, so one thing that I would like to share more on this is, so how we are doing it. So every Saturday we are connecting at evening 7 p.m. It's a virtual call around 60 minutes where we try to discuss this. It's an open forum. uh, it's a non-judgmental forum where you can express your views. There is no wrong answer as such, so whatever you feel like you can discuss. And this is a general plan that we have: initial 5 minute introduction, then around 20-25 minutes presentation on the topic, and majorly the discussion part. That is a key part of this session, that that is important. The reason being, I have also created a WhatsApp group, and we are. I am not allowing anyone to share over there. Okay, forwarded messages are not allowed over there. The reason is, I want to share this very interesting thing about data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. This is a pyramid, right? So generally, what happen in today's era, we have a lot of data and lot of information. So if you want to get information of any topic, just Google it, you will get it. But the major thing missing is understanding the exactly how it is useful, how to apply it, and the wisdom. So that is the something which is missing, and that's why uh, I would more focus on this session, discussing the information, discussing the reports that are available to us, and trying to understand how to implement it. What are the practical significance of different elements? So that's the core focus of this group. Okay. So yeah, so for today we will be discussing about life cycle assessment. In last week, we discussed life cycle thinking. So which is a basic of all these things. I'll just cover in short in just 1 minute what we discussed in last week. Okay? So the topic was life cycle thinking, and in which we discussed why exactly life cycle thinking is important. And one of the outcome of the session was, if we want to compare two products, right? So it's not possible to compare this with the limited information that we have. We need to understand the entire life cycle of that particular product or particular process. Then only we will able to understand the long-term impacts of that process, which is very important aspect of sustainability. If we want to design any product or any process as a sustainable, then life cycle thinking is an integral part. Then life cycle assessment is one of the practical ways how to do it. right? The conceptual is okay. So life cycle thinking, why it is important, we got it. But how exactly it is done, that is called as life cycle assessment. So in short, life cycle assessment, you can read on screen as well. So which aspects of the production are efficient? So in this assessment, we are trying to measure which aspect of the production are efficient and where they can improve efficiency to reduce the environmental impacts. Generally, LCA is for one particular product, okay, and it is also called as environmental life cycle assessment, ELCA. But generally, we do not call it as ELCA. When we call it as LCA, life cycle assessment, environment is majorly focus of that. But apart from that, new LCA are coming, that is social LCA. So we will see it in much more detail with one report. But here just I want to cover some basics. And second is related to ISO standards. So earlier there were around four standards, which is ISO 14040, 41, 42, 43 were there. But now only two are there. ISO 14040, which talks about LCA principles and framework, the basics. And the second standard is ISO 14044, which replaced this 41, 42, and 43 in 2006. So now we have ISO 14040 and 14044. So these two will be enough to implement this LCA in practical industries. So I hope this basics is clear, and so that we can move ahead with some reports. Should we?
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
So yeah, so I would like to start with this one guideline for social life cycle assessment of products. This is pertinent to understand the LCA. The reason being, uh, this will tell us why exactly LCA is done, so that we can understand it in a better way. Okay. So this is joint report by UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, and the Life Cycle Initiative. The report is old. It was published in around, I guess, 2009, as you can see on the screen as well. So we will directly start from the page number 8, which is general policy, general public summary. And I would like to read this entire summary because I think it is better to understand this concept. I hope you can see the screen and you can also read it. While yeah, so I'll read it for you. Okay? So it used to be that when consumers had to choose between two similar products, it was pretty easy decision to make. Just weigh the benefits of cost and quality, then pick the item and brand that suited your needs. Today, the choices are many and more difficult. Buyers are now driven to be conscious of the effects of their choices have on our environment and on the local economies. Do we buy from the farm stand or the supermarket? Which choice will result in less polluted, more sustainable growth? Perhaps even more daunting is the fact that some of our choices will have social and socio-economic effects as well, not only on workers but also on entire communities where production takes place. These social and socio-economic consequences are the primary concern of social and socio-economic life cycle assessment. So this is a very interesting extension of life cycle assessment. So earlier it was only environmental life cycle assessment, and now it is socio-economic life cycle assessment. So we will see it. Okay. And meanwhile, if you want to stop me and if you would like to discuss anything, please let me know. We can discuss at that point on. Okay. Next para. Life cycle assessments until now have generally been used to analyze the effects that a product or process will have on the environment. Results of an LCA study will let companies know which aspects of their production are efficient and where they can improve efficiency to reduce environmental impacts. All stages in the life cycle of the product are considered in an LCA, from the mining and extraction of its raw materials to the shipping right on to the landfill. Data are not only considered for the initial product but also for the full life cycle of other materials that are used in the making of the product. Social and socio-economic life cycle assessments add extra dimensions of impact analysis, valuable information for those who seek to produce or purchase responsibly. So this is at the both ends. So maybe as a consumer, okay, at the end of consumer while buying, and also as a, let's say, manufacturer if you are buying from your vendors. So there is also it is also applicable there as well. So let's take for example a simple cotton t-shirt. First, let's imagine that shirts, a hypothetical retailer has requested an LCA of their latest product, a package of white undershirts. Shirts Incorporation wants to know how this new item will affect its environmental footprint as a corporation, as well as what sort of improvements they can make to the production of shirts that will reduce emissions and other harmful environmental outputs. Furthermore, shirts want to know what sort of social and socio-economic effects these shirts will have on their workers and on the communities where they have shirt factories. As an already established company, Shirts is legally held to minimum benchmarks for things like workers' rights, but they want to take their social responsibility further and need guidance on how to proceed. The label fair trade is limited in scope and ignores use sections of the life cycle. While the making of the shirt may be ethical, the company wants to know if this can be true for the entire life cycle, even phases like shipping and disposal. These specifications and questions will help the analyst focus on finding data relevant to the goals of shirts. So here, one thing is important, that why life cycle assessment is important, why it is done, that scenario is clear to us, right? And then how it is done, we will see. Okay, I'll just jump to paras actually. Yes, so I'll read from here. So there are some difficulties with LCA, social LCA, so that they have listed above. So which might be if it is expensive, or the consistency of the standards between studies. So whether it is apple to apple comparison, because there are many qualitative data required in this. So in that scenario, while the difficulties of conducting social life cycle assessment are indeed many, at the end of the study, Sherds will have a wealth of invaluable information. The company will be able to know in terms of labor, the share of its entire life cycle worker hours that possesses a range of attributes. How much of this labor is child labor free? Do shirts practices and the practices of all its t-shirt inputs comply with, exceed, or fail to meet standards for human rights, working conditions, health and safety, and socio-economic repercussions? The study will provide detailed answers. Shirts will be able to communicate this information to its retailers and consumers via reports, web interface, or by putting tags on its products. The information collected will help the enterprise work to improve its social performances on key issues or in problem areas that have been identified in the study as needing improvement. It will also start dialogue for improvement in the supply chains. Shirts will now know how much more in depth the social impacts of a t-shirt from cradle to grave. Right, so this is nothing but the environmental, social, and governance, the ESG things that are in discussion, the kind of report that they have to publish. All right, so yeah, so they are asking the question about CSR, how they can bring it up. Am I audible? Is it clear? Can you please confirm?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you are audible and clear.
Okay, there is some noise actually, so that's why. Okay, all right. Yes. Yeah, so I'll read just this final part. But what Sherds actually does with this information brings up the question of corporate social responsibility, or CSR. What sort of obligations do corporations have towards consumers, communities, employees, and suppliers? Current CSR definitions and theories hold that companies should, at the very least, be held to international standards of human and workers' rights, and that they should consider environmental output regulations when making corporate decisions. Still, implementation of CSR is relatively new and poses complex challenges. How can we hold companies to a standard of ethical decision making? How can we give motivated companies the opportunity and tools with which to productively exceed the current standards of CSR? As further research will be conducted in the field of CSR and social life cycle assessment, and further negotiation occurs among countries and with their companies, it may be possible to obtain more precise guidance on socially acceptable production methods and to provide recommendations for setting system boundaries. There is also great need for better databases of social and socio-economic information, as well as the development of software tools that will speed up the process and help analysts for ways for anyone, consumer, worker, or citizen, to obtain information on a product's life cycle impacts and therefore a company's production methods. But in the end, if companies are not held responsible by their consumers, these questions of social responsibilities are difficult to answer. Inevitably, the accountability lies with the people who will be wearing the t-shirts and their desire to support a socially responsible corporation. So here two things are very clear, right? So why it is required, why LCA is done. So that backdrop is very clear. And fortunately, after almost 13 years or 14 years after this report, we have CSR mandate for companies. We have the ESG mandate for companies that is also compulsory for them. But why exactly the LCA is done and how a company can take a decision which will have long-term benefit for the people, for the environment. So that is interesting to know from this life cycle assessment. So I'll just quickly share one case study. Okay, so why life cycle approach is important. So this is, I guess we can go back to the year maybe 2000. Okay, so at that time, MTBE, methyl tertiary butyl ether, so that was added in the gasoline all over the world, and India also it was added. Okay, so I'll just read this short case story so that we will get better understanding. Okay, so generally what we tend to understand that if we are solving any problem with environment, right? So that is beneficial, right? So let's try to understand with life cycle analysis, life cycle perspective. MTBE is added to gasoline to increase octane levels and enhance combustion, which in turn reduces polluting emissions. So we have a problem over here that there are pollutants coming out of combustion engines, IC engines. But if we add MTBE in the gasoline, that can reduce ozone precursors by 15%, benzene emissions by 50%, and CO emissions by 11%. So there is a great benefit for environment, right? And that's why it was added in all the gasoline fuels in the entire world. But while MTBE helps mitigate air pollution, the MTBE itself may be toxic if not combusted fully. So this was the major problem which was not identified initially. Levels of MTBE in the environment are now measured when MTBE is suspected to have evaporated from gasoline or leaked from storage tanks, lines, and fueling stations. Of most concern is the MTBE found in lakes, reservoirs, and groundwater for potable water supplies. In some cases, MTBE concentration already exceed standard indicators for potable water, including taste and odor and human health. While MTBE is not considered highly toxic, there is insufficient information available on its long-term toxicity, including carcinogenicity and reproductive toxicity to humans, animals, and ecosystems. This situation illustrates the drawback of not taking a life cycle approach, focusing on air quality without thinking of water or land, and on only one stage of car's life cycle, namely emissions during use, generated unforeseen adverse effects on other environmental media and life cycle stages. So this is a classic example why life cycle approach and life cycle assessments are important. Here we had a problem, air pollution. We had a solution, additive. We added to the gasoline fuel, but the long-term impacts were equally dangerous for the environment and people, right? Or more so. While there is not always an easy choice, it is important to understand potential impact associated with each choice. In this case, taking a life cycle approach to evaluate MTBE may have alerted decision makers to potential water contamination problems and allowed us to prevent contamination by producing, transporting, transporting and storing MTP more effectively. So that's it about the theoretical part, life cycle assessment. Okay. Uh, if you have anything to discuss till this point, please do raise your voice. You can raise your hand. You can speak. Anything you would like to add or discuss, please.
I think it was a very fascinating concept of social LCA. I hadn't heard this term before. But I think what the challenges I think the large corporations would largely face was in terms of measuring these, because largely when you look at a multinational company, primarily driven by profits, revenues, margins, and other things, right? Now, when you get into these facets, these are largely intangible, very difficult to put numbers to it, and they are bound for a lot of interpretational issues. So my definition of poor or rich might be different from somebody else's, and a lot of other things can get entangled here, largely when you're on a multinational company. But the fact that we are sort of thinking on those lines, and it is there to be done as well, because if you look at globalization as a concept, it opens up so many things where different cultures, traditions are intermingled there. Now it becomes like a question of your localite versus somebody outside. All the boundaries get drawn. Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. Maybe there's another point of views, and let's see what can be done about it. But do you see these happening in any of those companies, Dhananjay? Have you heard about these social
Yes.
LCAs?
Yes, actually. For social LCA, so what is happening? So that is my best judgment. So maybe others can also add their point. So earlier life cycle assessment. So we will see it in detail as well. So how it is done. Okay. So in this report, it is the it is also shared. What are the different steps and how it is done. Okay. But earlier, let's say why LCA was introduced primarily due to environment, and that's why
Correct.
initially life cycle assessment was called as environmental life cycle assessment. That's it. Okay, so if we just go to page number 33,
Correct.
so this is environmental. Yeah, so starting with what is environmental life cycle assessment or ELCA, or normally called as life cycle assessment. So earlier, environment was the core focus of that,
Correct.
because we know that we are harming the environment. But later on, what we understood with sustainability awareness, that not only environment but social, right, or the economy, so that is also integral part.
Absolutely.
So socio-economic also gets added in environmental LCA as well for some of the companies. So when they are studying LCA, so then when they are saying LCA, so that also includes some of the times that social aspects are also being taken care. So that is also happening. But earlier it was only LCA, only environmental impact assessment or environmental life cycle assessment.
So this sort of comes as a subset within the larger LCA. There is no such thing like an exclusive social LCA that happens, right?
No, no, as
Oh,
such.
okay. Okay. Okay.
Social LCA is just one step, one addition. Let's say you have to do life
Okay.
cycle assessment, that will be done.
And
Just there
you'll
are
add a
some
component of.
additional points. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Got it. But again, what generally happens is when you start getting into the social realm, you have to transgress the boundaries of your organization.
Right.
And that is where it becomes very gray, right? As to what is within the boundaries and what is outside. And that's when maybe the most challenging part. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So if anybody would like to share, you can. Otherwise, we can move ahead and we will see the LCA and how it is done. Should we move ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So I'll not read entire content over here, but I'm just sharing it for your understanding, or you can read by yourself. Okay. So first is the LCA, which was primarily for environment. Okay, and product. When we say that it is done for a product, so it can be good or it can be service. So both are included into that. Okay, so how it came into existence, so that is shared over here in 1960s, 1970s, when environmental concerns were more after publication of, let's say, the Silent Spring book by Rachel Carson, or after publication of Limits to Growth in 1972. On that backdrop, also in 1980s, we have seen many environmental disasters. One of them was Fall gas tragedy in 1984, and again I guess there was nuclear disaster in that decade only, around 1986 or 87. So in this kind of scenario, life cycle assessment was thought as very important aspect to understand how exactly we are impacting environment, and how environment is impacting our entire processes. So that's how it get developed, and in 1980s, 1990s, so Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry, so SETAC, then United Nations Environment Program came into existence, and environmental life cycle assessment process was set up. So how it was used to be done, as a means of consolidating life cycle assessment procedures and methods. As we already know that ISO is the one organization or one body which governs this kind of systems, right? So ISO standards also came into existence. First, ISO standard 14040 to 43 were published in the years of 1997 to 2000 in this period. And in 2006, we have only two standards, ISO 14040 and ISO 14044. So from the year 2006, we have these two standards only. First talks about the principle, why it is done, how it is done, and 44 talks about more of the steps, what are the methods. Okay, so these are the ISO standards for this. So there are four phases of LCA, and this is unanimous with United Nations Environment Program UNEP, that the report we are reading, and also with the ISO standards. Okay, so we will see one by one. First is goal and scope. So what are the reasons for carrying out this study? What, for what purpose it is going to be used? So in that we have to clarify what is goal, and the scope means how big the scope will be. As rightly said by Mr. Shivkumar. So what is the boundary of that study, right? So that is important. That will be decided in goal and scope. Okay. Then second step, and which is very cumbersome process actually, life cycle inventory. So whenever you want to do a life cycle assessment, you have to take all the materials that are being used. Okay. So when any product is manufactured, right from the extraction of material to, let's say, the end of life of that particular product. So we are checking for entire chain, entire supply chain, what exactly resources are consumed on one end, and what are the waste being generated, what we are throwing out into the environment. So everything is measured in minute details, right? So this is very important part. Then the third part is life cycle impact assessment, LCIA. That is one step of this LCA, where the magnitude and significance of environmental impacts associated with elementary flows compiled during the previous phase are evaluated. So in this, we study this life cycle inventory and the analysis part. So identifying how these kind of elements are interacting with each other, right? So that entire study is done over here. And the final part is life cycle interpretation. So based on the finding and the analysis we had, so what conclusions and what recommendations that are the outcome of this study. Okay. So these are the four steps through which LCA is done. And there is very interesting aspect of these two as well. So they are sharing life cycle costing. Okay. So this is also one of the way that companies implemented, in which you don't have to, let's say your goal is very specific, right? You just want to measure, just you calculate all the inventory, what exactly going, what exactly happening in your company for that particular product. And directly, if you are understanding with respect to cost. So directly linking the cost with it, and you are deriving the outcome that is intended for your LCA, then it is called as life cycle costing. Okay, so LCC, life cycle costing. Okay, so it's an assessment of all costs associated with the life cycle of product that are directly covered by any one or more of the actors in the product life cycle, with compulsory inclusion of externalities that are anticipated to be internalized in the decision relevant future. So this is one of the definition of this. So this is again, some of the variations are there, but we will not see it now because we will see more on the practical aspect of it. Okay. So what is S life cycle assessment, social life cycle assessment, that we have already seen at the start. Yeah, so this is one important point over here. I have highlighted with yellow. So social life cycle assessment does not have the goal nor pretends to provide information on the question of whether a product should be produced or not. So it's not the goal of this social life cycle assessment. When we start this LCA, the intended outcome is not that it will provide us some concrete, let's say, outcome that whether we should produce this product or not. It's not the outcome. So maybe that depends on the discretion of the management, but it's only the assessment tool. Okay. Yeah. So incremental improvements that can provide, it's not a breakthrough solution for sustainable consumption and sustainable. So these 2 points are important to understand over here. Yeah. Yes, and Shivkumar, as you had asked the question, right? So ELCA and SLCA. So these are some of the common things, right? So both are actually the similar processes followed in both. So these all things, these are similar, as you can see on the screen. Iterative process that both require huge database, right? So information and decision making, it will provide some. The data assessment is also important, and it will give us some interpretation based on the study that we do. But complementary is, yeah. SLCA, that is social LCA, it provide more comprehensive picture of the product's life cycle impact. Right? So that is one of the additional point, and the difference, as you can see over here. The former is concerned with the evaluation of environmental impacts. The latter aims to assess social and socio-economic impacts. Yeah, and yeah, so in environmental LCA, mostly physical quantities related to the product and its process, use, and disposal. So that is collected and that is only analyzed. But in social, it will also collect additional information on organization related along with change. So I guess this is very much what we are seeing practically in ESG reports, right? So ESG report is also analyzing environmental impacts, but uh, what is the major difference that I can see in LCA and in ESG? That is, LCA is majorly focused on one particular product, but on the other hand, ESG reports or ESG governance is majorly focused on entire company. So how an organization is working or performing. So do you all agree on this point, or maybe you have some additional inputs, please?
So as you rightly mentioned, if we look at those ESG reports, they talk about people of different ethnicities being part of an organization and how each organization are taking various steps in order to uplift people from the lower strata of society. So I guess I guess if you look at it from that point of view, it is much more easy to digest as to what an organization is contributing to the society. The ESG reports look a more comprehensive view. But if you look at it from a product point of view, it's probably a very narrow way of looking at it. And maybe it has its own set of pros and cons, but yeah, but quite an interesting way to look at how a company is dealing with these aspects.
Right. So yeah, ESG is of course broad. So let's say for a company, there is a problem statement that anyway, ESG is about reporting, right? They have to report it. But let's say if a company want to understand in its true nature, what are the impacts that we are having on the environment, having on the society, first have a clear idea for us, and then we will work it out. And whatever reporting is, that is the secondary. So I guess their life cycle assessment plays a pivotal role, or in that sense, it's important.
And if some companies have a huge product line or a product base runs into hundreds and a lot of them, then maybe they might have to group those products, and then maybe whatever that makes it even more complicated in terms of conducting assessments for all products and other things. So
Yeah. Maybe this is simplifying the entire, maybe they have n number of thousands of
yeah,
products and processes.
yeah,
So maybe focusing on some key products, key
true.
processes,
Yeah,
and
group
that's
them
how
into
they
some
will understand.
portfolios, and then yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so that is the same that we have discussed already. So what is the goal of the study? So why social LCA is done? For example, learning about identifying social hotspots and the options for reducing the potential negative impacts and risks to product development and substitution in the supply chain, establishment of purchasing procedures or specifications, marketing, reporting and labeling, strategic planning or development of public policies. So that is one of the goal that they can have. Yeah, and regarding scope, as you can see in ISO 14040 specifies the scope should be sufficiently well defined to ensure that the breadth, depth, and detail of the study are compatible and sufficient to address the stated goal. Yeah, then the process chains, process data or economic input output data supplemented with environmental data. So how exactly it is done? So I'm not sure if any one of you you have worked in lean, actually lean processes. There is one tool, right? So where you identify the entire process, you map all the processes,
Value
right?
stream mapping.
Value stream mapping, right? So VSM is a core part. Thank you so much. I was not remembering the exact name. So VSM is a process where you get all the details of that process, right? And then based on that, you can improve the process. Where are the waste and that you can remove. So at the same time, I guess the LCA, if we take similar criteria, BSM will only focus on the company premises, right? On the other hand, if we do the LCA and if you are mapping and the scope of the study, so with entire process, you are visualizing how the product is moving, how the value addition is taking place, and for that value addition, what are the resources it is consuming and what is the waste that it is emitting. So it is nothing but inventory mapping, right? So what is the inventory that is consuming? And if we get that with LCA softwares available, you can just feed in that database and that will give you the what is the impact of that particular product, right? Yeah, so with ISO recommendations, so in scope, these things should be listed or should be considered and clearly described. What exactly the product is, what exactly function that we are using for that product, what is the functional unit, what is the system boundary, right? There are a lot of things. Stakeholder categories, allocation procedure, interpretation plan, assumptions, what are the limitations of that study, what is the data quality requirement we have. Yeah. Yeah, and as it's an iterative process, the goal and scope of the study may be revised based on the further understanding that we have. Yeah, sure. I'll be sharing this with you all. I'll just skip some of the part, the functional unit I'll skip. Then system boundary, conceptual system. So this is in scoping. We'll just check the inventory part. Yes. Yeah, so life cycle inventory is all about collecting all the data, collecting all the resources that we are using, right? And what is the outcome of life cycle inventory? So first is prioritization. We will get to know that where exactly we need to focus. For example, there are 10 processes or let's say 10 processes are happening, the value addition happening. And for let's say which is the top three processes or 80-20 rule, which are the 20% processes which are emitting 80% of the waste or 80% of the toxic emissions that company has, and based on that they can prioritize and they can work on that. Then hotspot assessment, site specific evaluation, and impact assessment characterization, right? So then inventory, collect the data to process iterative refinement of system bound, okay, to collect payment. Okay, all right. There are some steps are also there. System handling products. Yeah, while collecting the database, because uh, this entire LCA is majorly focused on the quality of data. If we have good quality of data, then that will ultimately give us the right kind of inferences or right kind of outcome, right? So that's why quality of data is very important in LCA. The more accurate it is, the better the results of LCA, and that will justify the cost involved in this entire process. So whether data is valid or not, is it relevant, what are the measurement methods, completeness, accessibility, and uncertainty. Okay, so on these parameters, the data quality will be measured or that is considered. Yeah, and next stage, the third stage is life cycle impact assessment, where we are analyzing the database that we receive, and based on that, our inferences, the next step. Yeah, all right. So I guess this is enough for this report. So let me know if you would like to go to any of the point that you feel that we should cover today. I'll just show you. Yeah, so this is table of content. I also wanted to share one thing with you. I'll just quick share. So as we were discussing ISO 14040, right? So ISO is more regarded in this context for organizations. So maybe I thought I'll just share quickly with you. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, so this is ISO 14040. It is lifecycle assessment principles and framework. Okay. And as you can see on the screen, this we have already discussed, right? So what are the benefits of this LCA? We can quickly check over here. They increase awareness of importance of environmental protection and the possible impact associated with the products. And when we say product, it is both goods and services. Okay. Has increased interest in the development of methods to better understand and address these impacts. One of the techniques being developed for the purpose is life cycle assessment. Right. So it can assist in first identifying opportunities to improve the environmental performance of products at various points of their life cycle. Second, informing decision makers in industry, government, or non-government organization for the purpose of strategic planning, priority setting, product or process design or redesign. Third, the selection of relevant indicators of environmental performance, including measurement techniques, and fourth, marketing. So maybe when it comes as what is the benefit of LCA? Let's say a company uh, had LCA and they understand how their product is superior compared to the competitors. So in that way, they can also have their brand or the marketing initiatives might be revolve around that outcome of the LCA studies as well. So making environmental claim or producing any environmental product declaration, so that's possible. Right, so there are four phases. As you can see, we have already discussed on that. First, goal and scope, then inventory analysis phase. Third is impact assessment, and fourth is interpretation. In short, they have given short introduction of all these over here. Yes, so this is about 14,040, and we'll also quickly check about 44. So here it is in much more detail actually. It's in first 14,040, it's just principle and framework. But in 14,044, more details about the exact process of each of this is listed. But for details sake, it's the same over here also. The forward and whatever is available on this ISO website, so that's same. Yeah, that's it from my side for today. The session is open for discussion. If you'd like to add anything, please. Would like to know more from you. What do you see? How do you perceive about this LCA? Okay, so last week, we had one question actually. Okay, so I'll just repeat that question and maybe if you'd like to share anything. So the question was whether there is any qualitative assessment for the LCA. Means whether there is any grading for LCA, let's say it's A plus or A or B plus, or there is a rating out of 10. Is there any available with LCA? So that was the question last week we had. If anybody from this group would like to share their thoughts on this question.
Even I'm about to ask the same question. So do we have any quantitative results or the qualitative results do we get out of the cycling assessment, life cycling assessment? For example, almost like last 10 years I'm in this field. Whenever we do the EAA or we do any type of analysis, ultimately it ends in the quantitative point of representation or the qualitative point of representation. Good, bad, average, or it is 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, 1 to 4. These kind of scalings only we do. Recently, I mean, not only recently, the environmental standards, what do we have? For example, air quality standards, water quality standards, or soil quality standards will not even support the life cycle assessment study because during the life cycle assessment, we are not going to study the major pollutants which come out of the product in the entire life cycle. So we are going to study which is traceable or non-traceable or something is less than the detectable limit. Sometimes those parameters will not be in the standards only. So recently what you told about the petroleum, what we added, and then most of the life cycle products, if you take tannery industry, textile industry, none of the pollutants are not even tabulated in the pollution control board standards or the WHO standards. So how we are going to utilize those like areas? I mean, how we are going to address those areas where there is no standards? So is this a good to use a qualitative way of representing the or qualitative way of answering the life cycle assessment or in the quantitative manner? Even I do have the same doubt.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, anybody would like to answer this or add their points? Please, you can.
So I just want to add one more point is, in continuation to the life cycle assessment, currently there is a topic for EPD, the Environment Product Declaration. But if you see in any of the product or any of the labeling, you cannot find this information. And wherever if you search for the information for the EPD, it is very much into that normal person cannot be able to understand. So this is a one challenge in our in the community of ESG, that whatever the information we are coming from, for the layman or the person who is using the information, the consumer, they are not able to find out what is exactly the information, and the producers is not able to put it on the labels. So this is also a challenge in continuation to the what he mentioned.
Right.
Sir, it's because of it's not been mandatory to have a life cycle assessment of products. Then the informations what we do in the life cycle assessment to be enlisted in the labeling. When you go for eco labeling, Ministry of Environment and Forest, they have a eco labeling. So they will ask life cycle assessment informations when you go for your products eco labeling. So that's why those informations are not enlisted in the most of the products labels.
No, but for
Certainly,
eco labeling also, I guess there are some ISO standards, if I'm correct.
Yes, sir. They have.
But the problem here is actually this LCA or the claims that eco labeling claims that they have. So it's not mandatory for them to publish the report as well, right?
No, it's mandatory for the company whom to have eco labeling. If they want to have a label which is given by the MOEF, they have to submit all the information to the MOEF. Then we can access the company name in the MOEF website or through the RTA, or it's about our interest. The product what we consume, which is eco labeled, then we have all the rights to get to know about the life cycle assessment of the product. So they might not enclose in the label. This might not be available in the website, but we have a rights. So I was part of the discussion like a few years back. So that time they gave that. It's
so certainly if I want any information, how can I access it? Do I need to go for the RTA to get the information? Right?
It's not. Sir, RTA is a last step. If you go to the MOEF website, they have option of applying for the eco labeling, and then there are products which already have eco labeled. So we can access in the website itself, or by speaking with the customer care of the product itself, they will give the information. The last step is to access through the RTI if you didn't get any information. That's how the websites are.
Okay, because as per my information, the eco labeling is a voluntary decision.
Yes, sir. That's it's not been mandatory. This life cycle assessment is not been mandatory. So it's all about voluntary. If you are want to enclose your product as organic or eco-friendly, or if it is let's say environmentally impactful product, then you have to go voluntarily to enlist your product with eco label in the stores or in the customers to the customers. So it's a voluntary approach. So most of the informations we can't access, but by the phone call to the customer care of the product or to the MOF, we can get it.
And I guess that is the reason why ESG is important, right?
Yes.
So with eco labeling, it's not mandatory for them, right? So maybe they will publish something, but the governance part is not there on behalf of, let's say, if they are reporting something in wrong way. So what we can say, the responsibility of that thing, that is not coming in eco labeling or the LCA. So that's why ESG is very important, where they are publicly sharing this database, and at the same time, year on year, public will also check, and at the same time, authorities will also check what is the performance of the company on ESG.
Even in the eco labeling, they're not even asking the life cycle assessment certificate from any organizations those are working, and they're not even asking ISO certifications and all. They're asking like how eco-friendly your product is. When we fill a few information about the product, and then it takes some time, and they give the labelings. So it's not even an open platform.
Yeah. So coming back to your question, actually, so you had asked the question, right? So whether it is graded or how it is
Qualitative.
Yeah. So what I read about LCA, so accordingly I'll tell you. So about LCA, I did not find anything as such grading of that. Okay, but what I found is one of the integral part of the LCA is the peer review or the certification from any competent body that okay, so this LCA done is correct. Okay, So at the end of the LCA, you have to do it. And what I find is LCA is a tool to study. So let's say it's a self-study by company to understand how exactly their products are impacting on environments. So it's not on a part of governance. It's not for reporting purposes. Maybe internal reporting, yes, but not for external reporting, or it is sought from government and that's why we have to do it. It's for companies' sake to understand how exactly their products are working and accordingly so that they can take the mitigation measures. Maybe it is risk management for them and understanding how their products are working. So I guess that sort of quantitative uh, measurement or the analysis of the report, so that I haven't found. But yes, peer review is one of the important part. And while interpretation of the report, yes, it can be quantitative and it can be qualitative. So both are there.
Yes, for that I want to add this information. So we have a tool like Gabby software. In that we can have a lot of data sets. So if we can predict also, we can get the like qualitative analysis in the sense like we can get a graphical representation. Where is the impact? So we can find out the hotspot. So if we go for that software, we can identify where the actual impact, environmental impact will be occur. So we can find easily, but only those people who knows Gabi software, they can easily find out those things.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
So there are many good softwares actually.
Yes.
So one of them is Gabi, as you
Yeah.
can see on the screen.
Mhm.
Right. So this is very easy to do, but just the thing that you should have the inventory that we were
Yes.
talking now. So that you should have the correct database. If you feed it into the system, it will give us the all interpretations and all the results. Right.
Yes.
And on that point, actually, I forgot to share with you one Excel file. So I'm just sharing. So Eco Invent is one of the other software for this kind of LCAs. Okay. So I hope you can see the Excel file.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is one example of how this database are maintained. Okay, so in this LCA softwares, so they have a database of all different products and different processes. So maybe according to the industry, let's say a manufacturing industry is there, and maybe we are focusing more on steel manufacturing or something. So they will have such kind of database for different time periods, different geography, what exactly is the emissions level, different parameters. So if you feed the right kind of, let's say, material ID or whatever inputs are there into the software, so the outcome would be it will analyze all the processes and it will give you the outcome. And I guess it is same with Gabi as well.
Yes.
Right. So as you can see, this is so extensive. If I go to the last, so yeah, so it's, and that's why life cycle assessment is little bit difficult to understand for people who are not trained in it. Yeah, your points, please. Okay,
So
yeah.
because of that only they are producing APD. So eco-labeling, what we discussed, like initial discussions and all, that also certified from like ISO 14042. So based on that, we can identify the impact. Again, same thing like GHG calculation. Only for product carbon footprint, we are going for LCA. So other than except all those information will be getting ESG.
Right.
What we discussed initially.
Yeah, so I got one message from Arul as well. So Spera LCA can be accessed by common public. So Arulji, if you have worked on this, maybe you can share with us how was your experience while doing this LCA. If anybody would like
Can you repeat? I get it.
Yeah. So I guess you had worked with Spera LCA. If you have worked on any LCA,
We are using. I am.
share. Yeah.
No, I have not used any LCA, but I worked with this Spera soft. This one we are using it for our recording of data. All green initiatives data we used to log into that one. We are not using it as an LCA. That's why I am asking that.
Okay. So I'll share that.
Hello,
Yes.
Dhananjay sir, this is Priyanka.
Yes, Priyanka.
So basically, there are two softwares. One is Gabi and other one is Seema Pro. So I have
Yes.
used it just to check it, like how it works. So it is not part of my research, but just to check, I have done some work on Gabi. So there we need to make a flow diagram.
You have used Seema Pro, right?
No, Gabi.
Gabi, okay.
Gabi.
So first we need to make one flow diagram of all the processes, okay, like flow of the processes, and then we
Plan.
need to put plan then we need to put certain arrows for input and output, and then we need to write the quantity of the materials, raw materials, and like everything is already fitted in that tool, and there are certain databases. Like if you want to find out LC of plastic bottle, then you have to choose a plastic database. So that kind of, like, I have done it long back, but it is very easy to use.
Correct. So we can get through YouTube as well. So if we put like Gabi usage, we can get like how are all the things we can find out easily by creating a new file. So we can get a lot of data sets.
Okay, that's great. So maybe next week, if we have any case study for that, so we can have.
Mhm.
Priyanka, maybe if you would like to take us through the process, maybe one simple example that.
Sir, actually, I'm in my hometown currently, and like when I'll go to college, then I can show it definitely,
Okay.
but not now.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, sir.
No issues, no issues. So we'll check next week if we can have something to show how exactly it is done. But yeah, so I guess Spera LCA, that is the same as Gabi. What I understood, so is it the recent? Because I guess Gabi was a separate name earlier.
No,
Sir,
it's the same thing.
currently, sorry, sir. Few of my friends, they are doing LCA, so they are using Seema Pro and Gabi. These are the most frequently used software in research. Suppose they are working for construction industry, so they are using Gabi or Seema Pro. So these are the two softwares which are frequently used as per my knowledge.
Yeah, it's very interesting how they have shown the sustainability or the ESG that is important for companies nowadays. Right on Seema Pro, you can see reliable sustainability data with various applications, enabled sustainability calculations throughout entire organization. Yeah, that's great.
So like we also get like through YouTube, but they'll won't give any access. So we have to take license and they have to go for that. So it's very difficult to get an sample. But YouTube we can get an example. That's all as a demo.
Actually, a
So
couple of
it's
years ago, I had one software. Now I
Mhm.
forgot about it. I had used, I had checked how it is done and all.
Yes.
I guess it was Gabi only.
Yeah. So Gabi is the same. So many customer, like many companies, they have been taken. So they only make in their own. Like Spera Gabi is also same. Some other like many Gabis we have from other companies. So all the data sets is same they're using.
That's great discussion. If anything you would like to add or any question you'd like to add, please go ahead.
Just to sort of look at it from an organization's point of view, we have a situation where every organization says on a yearly basis, this is the amount of carbon emissions that they are generating. So they imagine on a yearly basis, they come up with a number. So that is one of the starting points. Now to get to that number, they would have used an LCA to get there. So
Right.
once you get there, I think the next logical step would be they have their strategical target saying that in the next 5 years, 10 years, or 15 or 20 years, what they want to get to, or how do they get to net zero. So all those targets, now they will then have to make sure that each of their divisions within the company organization take appropriate steps to make sure that they reduce their carbon emissions or footprints, and then hence it'll in turn make sure that they have their target set up. Like for example, whatever percentage of reduction every year or every 5, whatever targets that they have. I guess that's where it all sums up together, right, at a very high level.
Yes, I guess so.
Murthy sir, I think LCA is not only about emission. Like the output will come in terms of acidification, eutrophication, or emission. Like,
Yeah, we have 15 categories for that.
Yeah.
GWP almost. Correct.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's only for like the scope 3 calculation we'll use LCA. So other than that, we have two, scope 1 and scope 2. That is purely on like GHG calculations. We have two types, fluorification type and non-fluorification. In that we can get CO2, methane as well as nitrous oxide. So again, it's a different part. So LCA only we are using for scope 3 calculations. Product life cycle, product disposal, as well as product processing, like sold products processing.
Yes.
So with all these regulations coming in, I think couple of sessions ago we had all these sustainability regulations coming up, right? So because the most important point is at some point we'll have to all normalize these things, right? Otherwise, each company running their own standards or other things, it'll turn these whatever data or great information that we have, if we are unable to somehow compare and draw some meaningful conclusions out of it, that's where I think streamlining across becomes very important exercise. And these LCAs are conducted by people within the organizations, or we'll have some time outside the organizations, auditors coming in as well.
So both they'll do inside as well as they have a consulting firm. So HCL will do a LCA for us like that. So again depends on the like organization management recommendation.
Correct.
I think it can be done inside, but it should be verified from outside.
Yes.
So maybe so what my understanding is ESG emissions are also they are calculating, right? So how much emissions they have, all the environmental parameters are reported there. And as you rightly said, so maybe LCA can be done to analyze exactly, let's say we have a broad range of inputs and outputs and they have reported it, this is our emissions. But to understand how exactly which process is emitting that, and in order to improve it, we have to first locate it. And for that, maybe LCA can be done. So would it be a correct inference?
No.
Or maybe drawing parallels to the SDG goals. I don't know how much can we do on those factors after you do an LCA. Taking the output or the result of an LCA and connecting them to the 17 SDG goals. I don't know how much of help that would be, saying that, okay, this is contributing to SDG 4, this is contributing to SDG 5, because these 17 goals in turn have a lot of indicators and other things, or how they're able to, but again, that is largely done at a very, very global scale, and how each organization looks at it might probably be vary depending on their sphere of work. Right. So maybe another way.
Actually, this LCA will give much more clarity to think the SDGs in a right way, because each and every SDG has more than like 20 plus targets. Each targets have a 50 plus indicators. So this LCA will go in detail. So this will help us to understand the SDG much better way. So for example, you take anything of LCA, like from the sourcing or through the processing or through the like landfill, each and everywhere we will be discussing about different targets, different indicators. So I don't think so there will be softwares which will be connecting in that point of view, but the LCA report might help the industries to declare themselves like they're working towards the SDG. So recently we prepared, I was part of a report preparation for the car manufacturing company. So for them, when we are working on the life cycle assessment on the and then green space assessment, this LCA helped us to indicate like which part of LCA was addressed by them in a good manner or the extraordinary manner, which helps indirectly to achieve the what type of SDGs and how their participation as a private institute, as a private company, as a private stakeholder, and then how they are indirectly supporting the government to achieve, or how they are participating in the government initiatives. So this LCA was like really a supporting tool for them when we gave a report to them.
Oh, thank you so much, Vivek, for adding that. So this gave me one thought actually. Just means whenever we are seeing eco label, whenever we are seeing anything claimed by any organization, so immediately we have to think about, okay, so they must have done LCA. Is it correct?
Yes. At least a bit, at least some part of LCA been done. So because some people will claim only based on the sourcing, some people will claim only based on the processing to call themselves or consider themselves as a eco-labeled people or eco-friendly people. So some part of life cycle is done when we see a labeling.
Right. So we should be wise enough to check whether on what basis
Exactly.
they are claiming it.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So it's an interesting discussion. Thank you so much everyone for joining session
Thank
and
you.
your inputs and participation. So if you have anything to add, please we can. Otherwise, we can stop here. Okay, all right. So
I just
I
wanted
had
general information.
yes, Akshay, please.
So I just came to know about this session of learning Saturday session from one of my friends. So how can I get this, a regular invite for this?
Okay, sure. So you have filled one Google form or not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll just share one Google form so that every Saturday you will get this invite on your calendar as well. And second
Okay.
thing, you will also get a link to join WhatsApp group. Okay. So there also you can join. So whatever is
Okay.
comfortable to you, we can do.
You can do either way, whatever suits you. So do I need to share my email ID or something in the group?
Just
Chat?
a minute. I'm just trying to put this on chat, but unfortunately, I'm unable to send chat to all.